Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the Venus Wisdom Collective virtual gathering, and today is May 12th, and we are in the year 2020. Woof. So we have Venus going retrograde later tonight, and I actually, as I was telling people before you got here, Tara, that I was just sliding in the door from getting back from town. So I'm going to just pull up the chart really quick so I can show you that. We can talk about it. I hope that you got a chance to listen to the other meetup that we did last week, because if you haven't, I would encourage you to do so, because it's really going to talk a lot about this cycle that's ending. And now is such a potent time for reflections. And I'm going to kind of go through the stages of how I've experienced the Venus cycle. And there's a certain richness that is available right now. There's a certain fruition of some really powerful insights of our own heart. So if you haven't, I encourage you to do that. I also have written a bit about it. And if you want to go through and read what I wrote about where Venus was in coming out of the underworld and each of the gates that she met, with dates of when those were, I can point you to my website. I'm getting my website updated where I have all of my blogs in one place. So it's really easy for you to go through and go, okay, what happened? And that writing might help you guide you into your own process. So I have been following the Venus cycle since 2012, and this coming up is going to be my eighth year of syncing with the Venus cycle. And so this is really important because she goes through 5 signs in 8 years. And so what we're doing now is we're going back to the same start of the cycle, Venus and Gemini, that was in 2012. So we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to also talk about what does Venus and Gemini just mean generally, and then what does the retrograde mean? And then, I'll make space for you as much as you want to pop in and just talk about some of the things that have been moving through for you as much as you want within this community. So the way that I've been talking about this, and I'm just kind of getting this chart up as I'm talking. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so at like 12. Depends on where you are, but it's in the wee hours here that Venus does her backwards motion at 21 degrees of Gemini. So if you know where Gemini is, if you have your chart, it's really good, if you're listening to this after, if you have it now, to really just see which house Gemini is in. That's going to be really important to identify that. And this is going to be the place where this whole new 19-month cycle is starting for you. And then also to identify where Scorpio is. And if you did not receive it, you can ask me for the house handout, and I can even put it in the notes here, going through what house means what, if you'd like some guidance around that. There's 12 of the houses. And that can help you go, okay, this is the area of my life that's really available for this power to be found. Because what the Venus cycle has been for me is this invitation into deeper authenticity within my own being. And this way that our feminine nature, the feminine initiation, is really this power to transmute our experience back into what we might call love. And it's a love of the mystery, ultimately. It's a love of life, ultimately. And so it doesn't mean that it's, easy. And I think the deeper you go with the Venus cycle, the deeper we went in this last cycle, we're really doing a lot of healing, ancient healing of the feminine wounding on this planet. And so it was a rough, I mean, I know some of you I've sat with, it was a rough 19-month cycle because there was really the scorpionic energy of wounding and trauma, and violation is very scorpionic, that energy that is both eroticism. And it's like the power of sex to be the most beautiful, connecting, spiritually elevating experience of love and intimacy, or to be a weapon. It's like that's the energetic of Scorpio. Scorpio is both the scorpion stinging itself, in that dark place, and potentially getting caught in a trauma loop and just stinging and stinging, stinging if we don't know how to get out of the underworld. And then Scorpio is also the eagle flying high and soaring above and going, wow, look at the power I have to find my resilience and to find my ability to become more whole by holding myself and holding these fragmented parts of me. So, in some ways the underworld is always about these things, but underlined when we have Scorpio in the mix. So let me just ask, before I go too much more into anything, if any of you were in the last class, and I know you were, Tara, I'm not sure if anyone else was, just if you want to pop in the questions, or if you just want to pop on, feel free to unmute. If you had any questions from that, or if there's anything that would help you link what we talked about then and like the direction you'd like to go now, because you already got that full transmission. And so I want to be building upon what we laid out, which was really the wrap up of the Scorpio cycle. And it feels like now we're turning towards the Gemini cycle.
Yeah, I mean, this past cycle was just really intense, and it's just interesting. I don't remember what you said the dates that it started, but in the first week of November, like maybe even the first or second day, I was in Central California, and these condors. I was meditating on a cliff, and these condors were swirling around me.
Oh, there's a sign.
And I was with somebody who's like a shaman medicine man. He's like, I can't even believe this is happening. Like, he thought that was so significant. And as you were speaking about the eagle and the underworld, I was like, wow,
right.
that is really intense. And so it was also my Venus return. So
okay,
I am in the last degrees of Libra, but in the 8th house of Venus. So it was definitely that energy. So it was pretty intense underworld experience, and I'm so glad it's over.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you for sharing that. And that was exactly it. I mean, officially that seeding of Sun meets Venus was October 26th, but she was visible for the first time, I think around November 6th, even earlier.
It was that weekend, like whatever that first week into weekend. And I mean, just lots of issues of dismantling codependencies in relationships, and dysfunction in relationships, and becoming more empowered in relationships, and all relationships.
Yes. Beautiful. And so that is a very Libra theme. And so the interesting thing about this Venus cycle is it started in the heart of the underworld, in that scorpionic intensity, the intensity of love, the intensity of pain, and there is something about that intensity that it's like you can't miss it, right? I mean, it really gets our attention. And we often learn the most through our suffering. Not to say that that it has to be that way, but often it is that way. It like shakes us up. And so it started in that deepest place of Scorpio, but the first visibility was in Libra. So the underlying theme really was this healing of codependency, this owning of our projections, this recognizing of the unbalanced masculine and feminine within us, and how does that play out within us. And so when I created the, whatever you call it, the like border for the Venus Wisdom Collective, I basically, okay, there's someone here. Huh. Is that true? No, okay, we're good. I'm paranoid that someone's gonna be left in the waiting room. The bullet points, just to kind of, sum it up in 5 points, is revolution in relating, transmuting dominator patterns, that would be both within ourself and other, healing of the feminine masculine split, and sacred other as mirror. And then the 4th is
that was
partnerships.
all definitely right there.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
I'm excited to hear about this one because now it's trining my Venus.
yay! And it's Gemini. What a different energy.
So.
Yeah. And then the last one being partnerships that change the world. Yeah, I will say them again for sure. And then, probably this is not something you notice in the group. I'm going to make a new header, but banner, that's the word I'm looking for. But in the Venus Wisdom Collective, when you go in there, that blue banner, which, I'll just share my screen with you and show it to you. But yeah, I'll absolutely read them again. But this is the thing, one of the things I like about Zoom. So this is can you all see that? Yeah, is the banner showing? I had a lot open on my screen. Yeah, okay, cool. So revolution in relating, transmuting dominator patterns, healing of the feminine masculine split, or we might say the feminine masculine war, sacred other as mirror, and partnerships that change the world. So those are key words that are pointing to both the Scorpio and the Libra. It's like, how do we take the intensity of our emotional pain and the truth of it, the truth of how we were hurt, and really face that, but without weaponizing it? How do we bring it into relatedness where we can actually share from that rawness, and it has a purity to it because it's our experience. This is really, really pulling back our projections. And of course, and please, of course, I'm not talking about doing this with someone who's not safe to do this with. Talking about our potential to take that pain, that emotional pain, that hurt, and to bring that truth into relationships that are safe to do so, where someone does want to hear our truth, and they do want to know us, and they do want to be intimate, and they want to see us, because that is what the feminine wants more than anything, is to be seen in her essence. And I just love, and I know I mentioned this in the last one too, but I just love that, in the heart of the underworld during this last cycle, when Venus was in Virgo, so when she was hanging on the hook in the Inanna story, she was in the sign of Virgo, disappeared August 14th, 16th, I can't remember exactly when. Mars comes through, and Virgo is the sign of the priestess and the healer and the sacred sisterhood. And in that place, she's basically a corpse. And that, so there's no objectification that can happen. He can only love her for her essence. And it's very unusual that those two have a conjunction in the underworld. So it was really, in a way, like a test of how far we come in our own objectification of ourselves, in our tolerance for objectification in our partnerships. I remember getting a book, it was called The Cover Girl Syndrome or something, that this guy had written about how men would heal from this very deep conditioning to objectify women wherever they went, to just see them as sexual objects. And he actually worked with men to help them heal. And I was just so fascinated by that. And it was at that time that in my own relationship, it started to become more and more apparent how much my partner was objectifying me, which was really kind of a shock given, who I thought he was and all of that. So it's very interesting when you start to sync with the Venus cycle, it becomes very obvious in your own life. And Tara, did you know that it was the beginning of the Venus cycle? I can't remember if you were understanding that was
No,
happening or these themes were already just coming in.
they were coming in, but I did not know. I mean,
Okay.
I didn't, yeah, no.
Okay. Okay.
I didn't
So,
get into it till this past fall when I first started meeting with you.
right. Okay. That's what I thought. So um, even if you don't know, oh yes, there is someone in the waiting room. I knew it. I could feel it. Even if you don't know, you may have the Venus cycle really initiating you into a deeper part of yourself. So you want to be looking at those dates for sure in the wrap up. You know what I said, the late October, the early November 2018 we're talking about here. And then in 2000 August, middle of August 2019, Venus was smack dab in the middle of the underworld and met with Mars in this cycle that is about the healing of the masculine and feminine, which is just so poetic. And then started climbing up in the fall. Hey, welcome, welcome. Started climbing up in the evening sky in the fall, getting higher and brighter. And now she's still in the evening sky, and she's about to go retrograde late tonight, early tomorrow, depending on where you are. And so it feels like, you know, we're still in the we're still in the evening star phase because we can still see her, and visibility is very, very powerful. If you begin working with me, you'll begin to um, you know hopefully, if you aren't already, start to visually work with Venus, because Venus really is this sister energy to the earth, and she's really this reflector. She's willing to reflect to us more of our feminine nature, which is just, it's so beautiful. She's like this wise cosmic friend that's like, girlfriend, I know you don't want to hear this, but we got to talk. All right, I got to tell you that thing you do. And you're like, oh, okay, only you can tell me that. Like, yeah, that's tender, but I can hear it from you, right? So, we get to ride with that energy. And so I want to talk a little bit about and sorry, my cat just opened the door on his own. He's just like such a stud. And I think my dog just escaped. So we're going to take a little break. I'll be right back. I got to go grab them. Okay, we're back. Okay, so let me just read some of the comments here. Okay, interesting. Teresa's sharing that there was a lot going on in your marriage in August 2019. Yeah. And Venus and Mars were in the underworld. And then Erica's sharing, oh yeah, second house. Wow. Yeah, so many people going through it in their relationships. And I would say, if you made it this far, like that's indicative that there's something strong holding you together. There's a lot of relationships that fell apart in this last cycle. Like if they couldn't hold through that level of intensity and transformation, a lot of relationships dissolve because the container wasn't there. So congratulations if you stayed in and you feel like you wanted it, and you both wanted it and you wanted to move forward. What a powerful experience for two people to go through. It's such a amplifying of our own growth process to be able to be in intimate partnership, which is really what Venus is so much about, is how we love, how we relate, how we connect, what our values are, how we attune to another and their needs. and then also our own self-worth. It really starts with our own self-worth. The way I think about it is it really starts, with Venus ruling both Taurus and Libra. It starts with that embodied Taurus experience of ourselves, and so much about how we feel about our own body, our own embodiment, and our value of ourself. And then it radiates out into the Venus and ruling of Libra, where we are connecting with another and going, wow, what is your experience? What's going on for you? And so there's a lot about projection that can happen, as we know, in relationship, but that's the Venus and Libra side of Venus. The Venus ruling Libra is the projection piece. And that may come up quite a bit in the Venus retrograde, because there's a real similarity between Libra and Gemini. And so Venus is starting this cycle in Gemini, and they're both air signs. And so there's a way that we are conceptualizing other in order to meet other with air. We're speaking, we're needing to understand other, we're needing to bridge this gap between myself and other. And so during the Venus in retrograde time is an excellent time to see our projections and own our projections and really understand the power that the projection can really distort things. And so let's just talk about some dates too. Let me look at this. Wonderful. Yeah, thanks for the notes. Okay, so we are the other thing I want to say about Venus, is that our fulfillment on this planet as human beings is totally connected to Venus. So this is another reason why I want more visionary, powerful women to sync with the Venus cycle, because it is the key to our fulfillment and for us to really feel the pleasure of our life and our potency and our creativity, as well as actually creating abundance. She's absolutely connected to money and possessions and having a beautiful aesthetic in our home or wherever our space is, and just the love of sound and sight and texture and how they all flow together. How we attract is also Venus, our magnetism. And there's a really great prayer in this red Tara meditation practice. And red Tara is just like this badass red Buddha. And she basically tames everyone through her magnetism. She just uses her feminine magnetism to charm all the baddies into wanting to be enlightened, basically. This is like a really kind of interesting way to think about magnetism. Is like they are so inspired by her attractiveness and her invitation into a compassionate viewpoint that they totally change just by coming into contact with her. I love red Tara with her little sassy bow and arrow, and she's definitely got it going on. So, okay, question. It sounds like it might be a good time for relationship counseling and support, which you're getting ready to start. Absolutely. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about this Venus retrograde period. On a energetic level, Venus rules the second chakra, or the womb, which is not too surprising. And so that's one of the reasons with the Scorpio energy that we might have healed some sexual trauma. And oh yeah, someone's doing the red Tara mantra. Oh, I love it. And that, whatever practices we have that really allow us to take whatever are these hurt parts of us or traumatized parts of us and surround them in love, purify them back to their perfection, which they never were not, or however we want to think about it. It's a really beautiful time to do that. And there's going to be some really beautiful portals if you want to do ceremony, if you want to drop in. So Venus has been in Gemini since April 3rd, and she's going to be in Gemini until August 7th. So this is a really long time for her to be in one sign. So let's talk a little bit about Gemini, and then we'll talk about the retrograde period, which is 40 days. So as I said, Gemini is an air sign, and there's very much a sense of freedom, changeability, fluidity about Gemini. If you have, does anyone here have a lot of Gemini in their chart? Teresa, okay. Anyone else? Okay. So Gemini is connected with the planet Mercury, right? When we think about something being mercurial, if you've ever seen that little blob of Mercury, right? It's so shimmery and shiny and moving, and that is really Gemini's brilliance, is ability to see things from many perspectives, to really have this openness and a sense of acceptance for people being different and holding different perspectives. And actually, it's one of the reasons that, Gemini can do so well at a party is because that energy is just really interested in like, well, what do you think? And what do you think? And there's like this curiosity that is a part of the Gemini consciousness that really we're all being invited into more and more and more for this next 19 months, which is hugely different than that Scorpionic intensity, right? Okay, triple Gemini husband. Okay, yep. Loves small talk, changes his mind. That sounds very Gemini. And that is sometimes the challenging part of Gemini. And Teresa, you might be able to speak to this, is, wanting to hold open the door of possibility and be like, well, I don't want to choose, so that fluidity, not wanting to ever take a stand, because then you lose the possibility of having all the doors open. So there can be a real ability to multitask because of that, to do many things at once and have your mind go in many directions, and just a lot of ability to engage with Venus and Gemini specifically, to flirt, to use words and poem and song and sound to engage in attraction and those delights of, even if there's no intention to take it anywhere, it's just like the act of flirting itself can be really fun for Venus and Gemini. And Teresa, do you have Venus and Gemini, or do you have Sun and, oh, okay, good. So does this sound familiar?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm very verbal with the way that I flirt. I feel like I do it much more on an energetic vibe.
Mm-hmm.
I think the fluidity and the inability to commit to anything. I've been married for 20 years, so I can commit, but that's a whole other story that's been dismantled and unpacked in this last cycle.
Yeah.
But yeah, very much. I'm all Gemini. I feel like so much of it.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And, even if a Venus and Gemini is in a committed partnership, I can imagine that there still needs to be a sense of being able to engage with others, go out to parties. And like, there's just something about that social engagement that is exciting for Venus and Gemini, regardless of whether they're single or not, right? All the Venus and Geminis that I know have been like, yeah, I still got to go out and flirt. I'm not going to cross any boundaries, but it's just like part of who I am.
Mm-hmm.
So the shadow side of Gemini can be that inability to decide. And because there's that sense of fluidity, to stay on the surface. So that might be you here, like the hard part of Gemini is to be superficial, or to not be able to land. So you can already feel how different this energy is from the Scorpio. Scorpio is fixed water. It's like, I'm going to die on this mountain of this feeling of intensity. It's like totally different. Gemini is like, well, we're going to just explore and discover and possibility, and who knows where this is going, right? So, we're starting to shift. We're still until June 3rd, we're still in the Venus and Scorpio cycle. We won't start a new cycle until Venus meets Sun in that sacred union. But it's such a page turn, right? It's such an energetic difference to go from the Scorpio to the Gemini. And so some dates to know about the actual retrograde is it's today, May 13th, all the way to June 25th. And so it's 5 degrees Gemini until 21 degrees Gemini that this retrograde is going to happen. I do not consider Venus in the shadow right now. So you might hear some astrologers talking about the shadow period because Venus has, passed the point that she's going to retrograde at. But when we look at what's actually happening in the sky, Venus is not in the shadow. She is still gloriously bright in the evening sky. And she just passed the point where she can actually cast shadows. So, that feels to me like sometimes astrology feels disconnected from the living sky. And so I ditched the whole Venus and shadow idea once I really started to feel into what's happening here. So the way that I see this journey, just like as a very brief overview, because we're ending something now and we're going to begin something else, is that when Venus meets the Sun, she's receiving her instructions. Her own heart is lit up by the divine. She has this incredible, exquisite, luminous support from the divine masculine, the Sun. She is backlit by the Sun. And so it's like a seeding of what her next heroine's journey is going to be. That's going to bring her deeper into her feminine power, that's going to teach her something she doesn't yet know about this quality of feminine consciousness, in this case, Venus and Gemini. So it's Venus and Gemini for 19 months, even though, she's going to move in beginning of August. She's going to move into Cancer. So all of the signs and the phases that she moves through in those 19 months, they're like chapters in a book. But the book is Venus and Gemini for the whole 19 months. So that's something really important to know, because when you were born, this is something, if we ever work together, you're going to find out, you know what your Venus sign is, most likely. I hope so. You might know your Venus phase, but where was that seed planted before you were born? That is really good to know, because that energetic, that meta feminine energy infuses the whole cycle. So your chapter is like, I'm morning star Venus and Scorpio, fullness, like high and bright, like young feminine, like I'm on my vision quest, I'm off. And so when I look at, well, what is the infusion? What is the energy infusing my cycle? Well, it was so early in the cycle that it's still Scorpio. So that really underlines the Scorpio-ness. It would be very, very different if it was a Venus and Gemini start, and then I had my Venus and Scorpio later on. Can you feel that? It's like that chapter came later, and so it wasn't in the inception. That seeding at the beginning is really important. So that's something that we can play with in the group. And if we have a session together, we can definitely talk about, well, where was your Venus cycle? There's only 5 that happen within an 8-year period, and they change. Okay, so we're really invited to learn about this Venus and Gemini. Oh, there's someone in. I knew people. Okay, good. Yay! We have another Venusian joining us. Okay, great. So Mar, you were born in Venus and Gemini cycle. So if you have your Venus in Gemini, or you know you were born in Venus in Gemini cycle, this is going to be a particularly personal cycle for you, just like the last one was for me, because it started in Scorpio, right next to my Venus, and then she appeared pretty much right on top of my Mars and my ascendant. And I knew it, I was like, oh, dang, this is going to go deep into my personal issues. And for me, what I discovered is that in this looking for my sacred feminine at the beginning of the cycle, at the beginning of the cycles, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's the magic, is just like that openness of like, whew, we're receiving the seeds when Venus meets the sun. And so we're going to get clues. But it is only now that the puzzle pieces came together. And I was like, dang, I went looking for my sacred feminine. I knew it was going to be personal. And what did I find? I found my wounded, crippled masculine. And now I'm helping those inside of me to work together. I had to confront my abandonment from my father, this man that showed up with like all these words of devotion and like seemed to be on the surface the most excited person I've ever been with to be with me. But that was not actually what was happening. He was actually completely unavailable, but it took me layers to get it and be like, wait a second, something else is going on here. The crippled masculine that doesn't actually know how to show up in devotion. Oh, I get to bring that back to me. Have I not been able to support myself? How have I struggled around generating resources for my daughter since I left that marriage? Oh, this is getting mirrored to me so strongly. And, I hadn't seen my father for 5 years, and he had a heart attack at Christmas, and I ended up stepping in and helping him and being like, whoa, like having to confront all of the feelings about him abandoning. So it's a surprise to me. I never would have known at the beginning of the cycle, like, whoa, I'm going to really discover my own, impotent masculine. Now, the impotent masculine is really up right now if you have your Chiron in Aries. So that was the other piece that I knew was going to be personal for me, because I'm in my Chiron return. So only if you're, what is it? Probably maybe 48 to 52, you might have your Chiron in Aries. Actually, it's a 7-year spread. Look in your chart. So if you have that, you may also be getting this activation around the wounded masculine, the impotent masculine, because the real deal with the feminine that became so clear in this last cycle is she cannot really relax and be all of her yummy, delicious feminine if she's not held, if we're not holding ourselves. And one of the women in our group, Avatara, she's a Venus and Gemini, and I showed a video of her dancing on the beach because it was so Venus and Gemini. It was just wonderful. But she was really talking about that, like that templating inside of us, that Hieros Gambos, or sacred marriage, that when we have that masculine within that is so actually authentically devoted to our feminine, we're not going to let any external man or woman be our partner, because it won't fit the template. The template's like sealed. And I was like, wow, this is so incredible. That's like the most beautiful way to end the cycle, is that like inner devotion, and so completely like there's no more room for bullshit. I feel like that's what the Venus and Scorpio cycle showed us. Like all those hooks, or all those hopes, or all those, like ways that we would imagine that it might be okay, but our gut was really telling us it wasn't. It was like done, cleared. Like now in the Venus and Gemini cycle, like like now that we've got us, and it's not to say, you know, that that's forever and it's done, but fundamentally, I think a lot of us are holding ourselves much more strongly, holding our own sacred feminine. Like, no, I'm not signing up for that again. Like, I got me, and I'm really going to radiate this wholeness of this devotion within me. And now it's like, let's have some fun in the Venus and Gemini cycle, because we're not like paranoid and having to like look over our left shoulder and being like, whoa, I thought this person was totally this, but they don't seem to be that at all. Like the betrayal of like, God, they're just not showing up at all like I imagined that they would. So I feel like we had to get kind of like in there deep and really get shaken and really see where were we still vulnerable to be taken advantage of. But we opened the door. You know, that was kind of something that came to me about my lover during this time, is like being like, dang, I got robbed, you know, like really seeing the thievery in my own vital life force and my own Shakti. And like, but I opened the door. I let that thief in my house, you know, and now being like, all right, well, now I'm clear. And it doesn't mean that I need to like get revenge or do anything like that. I'm clear. It's like, you know. And that is a really good question about the Gemini twins, because I love actually that you brought that forward, Celestia, because it is the same theme. We're talking about how the Libra is very similar to the Gemini in some ways. And, you know, Libra is so relational, and this last cycle was appearing in Libra, but it is absolutely, it's like another reverberation of masculine and feminine, but it's less polarized. You know, it's like the Libra is very much an extremophile. It's like, I'm going to learn about things by going from one extreme to the other. It's like weighing the two sides. And Gemini is, the dance is more fluid, I think, less like a teeter-totter, more like a, you know, let's flow into this understanding of masculine and feminine working together. So I love that you brought that in. Absolutely. It's like another invitation into the masculine and feminine balance. But in a way, hopefully we balance them more. Like we went through the extremes of it, and now we're in a more, like the intensity is less, the neutrality is more, and so it can be more fun. That's my goal. More fun, and to take on different forms too, in, you know, the pleasure of friendship and kinship and community has a lot to do with Gemini. It's not just about like our one intense love, you know, it's more spreading that heart energy around. Okay, so there's no one else to be let in. Good questions. Mara has a lot of Aries. Okay, so heads up, Mars is going, and just like Venus, so isn't this cool? Just like Venus is going retrograde, and we're ending the cycle that's about the balance of the masculine and feminine in kind of an extreme way. Mars is also going to go retrograde, and he's going to be in Aries for like what, 5 months, 6 months, starting in August, I believe. So we're going to get a huge dose of that fiery yang energy. And so if you have planets in Aries, if you have Chiron in Aries, just know that that's going to get activated. And like, how can we direct that vitality towards the protection of the feminine, the protection of the vulnerable? I mean, that is the sacred warrior, using that strength, using that bravery and courage to protect, not to go out there and do more harm. And, you know, so this is a real time of I think a lot of people who either have a lot of masculine energy, or for men that have felt impotent in this culture, to really rise up in their protective strength. And so that, you know, could be really beautiful too, to see that. And then within our own self. Okay, so any questions? Just feel free to drop them into the chat or to come off mute. I just kind of want to pause here for a second and see um, if there's anything else that's coming up before I keep on riffing. I'm glad to have you all here. I'm really ready for the shift. So the way that I feel into this is that when that seeding happens, when Venus meets Sun and that divine union happens, that merging of Eros and broken open tenderness of the heart, that we really get this initiation to understand more of this Venus and Gemini, and to go on our own heroine's journey, in our own way. Like what that could be about would be, how am I communicating from my heart? How am I actually conveying with my tone of voice, with the words that I choose? How am I conveying my inner feminine? Or how am I helping people to connect through words and through ideas? How am I staying open in the face of divergent viewpoints? How open can I be in the face of someone who totally disagrees with me? Like, can I flirt with that? Or do I take it deadly serious? This person has now become the enemy because they disagree with me. Or you're like, wow, they totally disagree with me. I'm so curious. What are they about? What makes them tick? So this is like a total ninja power for the next 19 months. And as I'm sure you've noticed, things are pretty divisive, especially on social media right now. And social media is, it's very much the realm of air, the realm of Gemini, and also the age of Aquarius that we're going into with technology. It's harder to convey our humanity in social media and the tone of our voice. And, we got to get better at that in order to really bring heart into these virtual realms at a moment when the whole world's, needing to lean into the virtual more than we ever have. So how do we do that? That's going to be part of the inquiry, and just looking at it as an inquiry. So if you are able to, on June 3rd, to create some space to just be in your own wild openness, always incredible to be in nature in some way. I always vote for that. But more importantly, to really drop into your own feeling space, your own essence. And one really great way to do that with Venus and Gemini is to actively choose not to know, to give your brain this job of like, I'm going to just not know. I'm choosing not to know. I don't know what's going to happen. And to really even talk to yourself is very sexy Venus Gemini behavior, to have a dialogue with yourself about your own inquiry, and to allow that voice within you to be heard, that's curious and going, whoa, yeah, I'm kind of getting into some righteous judgment here. Can I get curious? Or can I flow here? Can I get more fluid? How do I reconnect? Like, I feel like I'm disconnecting from this person because of this conversation. I actually want to connect. How can I re-engage in this conversation? So yeah, June 3rd is when Venus is going to meet the Sun, and we're officially in the new Venus and Gemini cycle. So between now and then, so at the end of the cycle, as soon as Venus goes retrograde, and she's going to start to drop out of the sky, she's going to have one more meetup with the moon. And I put that graph in the group, but can I find it? If anyone remembers, if you saw that, I made like a little chart for the group about when she's going to meet up with the moon. I'll look in the group. That's probably easiest. We really get this last time to engage in all of the rewords while she's still visible. So starting tonight, that retrograde period is a chance to review, reconnect, recommit, reassess, all of that kind of qualities about this last 19 months. And new insights might come. Like if you've been really in it and really, tracking yourself during this time, just being in your wild openness, new information may come as soon as she's retrograde, because that's one of the qualities of retrograde, is that new information will come to light, new insights will come to light oftentimes during retrogrades. Okay, let's see if I can. That's privately. Oh, let's see if I can put a file in here. Last time that didn't totally work, but I'm determined for it to work. And I could also put the houses in here if this works. Okay. I don't know. It says it's sent. You can let me know if that worked or not, but. Ooh. All this other stuff. What? All right. So we have Venus going retrograde in Gemini, May 12th. We have Jupiter. We have a lot of retrogrades right now. Saturn already went. Jupiter is joining into a retrograde backward motion. And then we're going to definitely feel this Gemini energy more when the sun goes into Gemini, right? That's a huge, Mercury's already in Gemini. And then we will have a new moon in Gemini on May 22nd. Mercury is going to meet up with Venus on that new moon. So you see already the theme is emerging, mind and heart together. And then Gemini is the mind, Venus is the heart. How do we merge the two? How do we hold more of our heart's intelligence? How do we hold more of our mental activity within a heart space? And how do we bring more of our heart to our mind space? The last gate that will be visible in the evening sky is May 23rd. So you will be able to see that in the evening after, when the light dims. Venus is going to meet Moon. So that's above if we're going with the chakras here, people have different theories on that, but that would be like above the above 8th chakra, above the crown. And then on the 28th, Venus is going to disappear from the morning sky or evening sky. And, it kind of depends on where you are, how long she'll be invisible. It generally can be, I've heard different things, but, and it'll be interesting to watch. Like, I hope each of you in the group will report the first sighting. That I'm going to be bugging you for that. Let me just warn you, because what that means is getting up before dawn. I'm warning you now. Be like, okay, who's seen Venus? Who's seen Venus? Who's seen Venus? Because we want to know, like, where is she visible when? Can't see her after the sun rises. So that means, doing the deed of getting up, getting some tea, and if you have a vista, to go see that Eastern rising, so you can check her out. Okay. So yeah, really the main piece of this 40 days of retrograde, which includes the evening sky retrograde, falling from the evening sky, invisible for around 2 weeks, and then appearing in the morning sky, still retrograde. And then she gets into her spot in the morning sky where she's highest and brightest, and she goes direct. That's actually right when I was born, right? She was turning around, being like, vroom, going forward. So to know when you were born in the cycle, it's like your cycle return. So you want to be paying attention to that so that you can really be syncing, especially during that time, because it's a support for your deeper heart. Our Venus sign in the house is a bit more about our personality, which is very important, and how our feminine manifests in our personality. But the phase is more about our deeper heart and our feminine dharma, that part of us that's in service to life. And it's really interesting because morning star Venus need to be in service by really being in touch with themselves. Service does not look the same, and I love this. You know, some Venuses really need to be tuning in and tracking themselves as their act of service. Other Venuses are shamans in the underworld. They're the healers. They're the ones that help transition between places. You know, they're the gatekeepers and the stewards of different realms and different realities. And then evening star Venus is more about bringing the fruits of the wisdom of dying and being reborn and the incredible maturity and compassion that comes from that back into the community, demonstrating it, showing how that looks. It's all important. Okay, so I lost your screen. So if you're asking me questions, I have no idea. Let me look. Okay, it worked. Great. Will it be more southeast or due east? Well, it will be pretty close. Venus is really out of bounds right now, so she's really far off the ecliptic, but that's only until June 6th. So if you watch like the moon rise and set, wherever the moon is rising in the east, that's a good indicator of where Venus will be. You know, it's like the ecliptic, you know, it's all the planets will be pretty close to that line. So you can kind of see that if you want to get a preview of where. And that it might not actually be, that's actually a really good idea to go out and kind of scope it, because, you know, if we're not watching planets rise and then it changes with the season, I have here in Sonoma County the best spot to see the epic eastern view. So if you want to get up early with me, Cilicia, and go out there on a quest, I'll share my spot with you. Okay, so other themes of this retrograde is opening up this inquiry around how do you connect with how you feel? What is your process for doing that? How fulfilling are your connections feeling? Because what we're really doing during the retrograde is it's like this it's this dissolving of the energetic of the last cycle and deciding what we're going to bring in. And like, does it feel, you know, that Maria Kondo act where you pick up each item and you ask, does this spark joy? You know, that's a very Venusian act. So what of your connection sparks joy? You know, what in your life sparks joy? Like, this is really good inquiry for the Venus retrograde, because you're going to see what feels dead, or like, I don't know if I want to bring that with me on this next journey, on this next chapter. And, you know, it is possible, because of the Gemini theme, that you may become more aware of relationship issues with your siblings, maybe especially your sisters, because of the feminine piece of that, relatives, neighbors, like all of that's very Gemini stuff. And it is pretty interesting too, because we have a lot going on with the COVID outbreak and our relationships with our neighbors, you know? So I think it's a really good time, again, to bring heart to communications, and especially if there's stress involved, is like, how can we facilitate good relations with people who we are in our immediate proximity to. You know, I know for us, we live on this really epic road here in Western Sonoma County, and the homeowners on our road decided that they were going to make a sign, because it's a private road, and say, nobody can walk on our road because of COVID. Like, sorry, people. And neighbors have been walking on this road for years. And the neighbors were pissed. They were just like, what? It's like, okay, that probably was not, you know, the most helpful neighbor connection during stressful times move. And then some kids came and they stole the sign anyway. So everyone just walked on the road anyway. But you know, it's like, we're all under stress. We're all under this tremendous change. And like, how do we bring small acts of joy to each other? How do we bring kindness to each other when we feel that spark? You know, how do we create that in our immediate environment? It's very Gemini. How can you become a better listener? How can I become a better listener? How can we become a better listener? This is a huge Venus and Gemini invitation. So deep, right? To listen and really hear each other and to ask questions, and who was it? Like Dale Carnegie or one of those guys. It was like, seek first to understand before you even try to bring forth your viewpoint. Well, I'm sure that he wasn't the first one to think of that. He got the credit, but there's something to that we don't really practice that much in our culture. There's a lot of, everybody's got some ideas and some very powerful opinions, and we're putting them forth before opening up the space. So the power of questions, the power of inquiry, and just noticing, like, what doesn't feel interesting? Where do you feel bored? Where do you feel distracted? Where do you feel restless in your life? All of this is great material to collect during the Venus retrograde. What else? Okay. The other cool thing about the Venus in Gemini, I feel like it is such a tremendous opportunity to rework our story and our narrative. And especially coming out of all of that trauma of the Venus in Scorpio, it's like, how do we claim victory on that? Be like, yeah, I am here. And my story is beautiful. And not that we need to be like shouting this from the rooftops if we don't feel comfortable, but even in the way that we hold it within ourselves, or, the way that we share our experiences with others, that's our narrative. And how do we really own our learning and own our healing so that we're leading with that energetic of, yeah, I went to the underworld and I'm back, baby, and here we go. It's like, it's a new day. There's something about that feels very powerful, especially because right now the narrative has been so hijacked by very few people with a lot of money. And there's a lot of manipulation that happens when the same narrative is repeated over and over. We need, during the age of Aquarius, for more people to be in touch with and to express and chime in about their own unique perspective and narrative and vision. That really is the cutting edge, and the way that we'll begin to innovate and find solutions is not to be cookie cutter people that are all trying to be like whatever, but to really have the courage to bring forth our unique freakiness. Like, if it feels edgy, if it feels like, I don't want to do that, what would they think? Like my teenage daughter, like, I'm sure if any of you have, some of you do have teenagers, it's like, I can just like itch my nose and it's embarrassing to her. Like, it's like, whoa, like that whole, like, what do other people think is so amplified. It's such an interesting study to watch that. And then how am I still carrying that in my being at a more subtle level of like, oh, I can't do that. What would they think? But like really listening to our heart guidance. There's so much information. There's so much data coming at us. And to really sit with ourselves in our own not knowing and trust our hearts and our heart wisdom. Not that we don't take in the data and the information and the perspectives from others. That's really important too. But ultimately, we claim that authority of our own heart. That's going to be the part of the turning at the end of this year between now and December 21st. We are in this portal of creating the future. We are laying down the tracks right now for the age of Aquarius. And Aquarius and Gemini are very simpatico too. They're that air, that vision, that conceptual. So another piece, and then I'm going to start to wrap. And I should check for questions. Is that Venus is going to be squaring off with the dreamer Neptune in this Venus cycle. She's going to be in this tense aspect with the planet that represents imagination, dreams, vision. It's very different than the Uranian dreaming. The Uranian dreaming is more, I don't know, there's an electricity to that kind of energy. There's like that revolutionary, liberating kind of energetic, whereas Neptune is more this imagination and the beauty of music and how that can actually help us move between worlds when we're really moved by art or music. So the two of these, Venus and Neptune, being together, especially, I mean, they're squaring right now as we speak, you know, as Venus is starting to already starting to turn around. And Venus, when she meets with the sun on June 3rd, is going to be squaring Mars, who's going to be pretty close to Neptune in Pisces. So remember how back in August of 2019, they met in the underworld and they were together, they were conjoined in Virgo, in the sign of service and healing. And wow, she's on the hook. So there's got to be something else going on here that they're going to love each other for. And then when she meets the sun in divine union at 13 degrees Gemini on June 3rd, there's going to be this square to Mars very close to Neptune. And so there's this way that this theme of imagination is really woven into this cycle. Neptune is considered the higher octave of Venus, you know, like the more cosmic, ethereal mystery that we can't really even name. You know, the mystery that we go back to when we die and that we swim in until we're born. So there's something about these two together that really asks for us to activate our creativity and our non-linear. So Gemini is very linear. Gemini is very heady and very, very rational. And so it's like a beautiful combination of how do we allow that imagination into our writing, our thinking, our conception, you know, our conception of the world. So we're like redreaming the possibility as we move forward. Okay, so let me see. Let's see if there's anything else. I mean, there's so much more I could say, but I just, you know, it's kind of like a good dose. Okay, let me just say dates again. The June 3rd, I've said a few times, Venus meets the sun. June 9th, Venus will have her first appearance as morning star. Still in Gemini, still retrograde. And then June 25th, she is, oh no, hang on. Yeah, June 25th, she goes direct, still in Gemini, in the morning sky. So looking at your house that has Gemini, seeing if you have any planets between 5 and 20 degrees Gemini, or Sagittarius, opposite. It's really always good to check the opposite. The other thing that's going on that could be like a whole other conversation, which I'll just bow to for a moment, is that not only is Venus taking up this Gemini energy very, you know, very strongly, but the nodal axis shifted so that now the north node is in Gemini and the south node is in Sagittarius. So our whole evolutionary thrust right now, and where all of the eclipses will be happening for the next 18 months, will be in Gemini and Sagittarius. So, you know, that's going to add a lot of extra emphasis on these Gemini qualities of being open, asking questions, being willing to be fluid in our thinking and agile and curious, and ask, you know, ask about things that we don't know. You know, the knowing and the righteousness is really more Sagittarius, like people being really cemented in their opinions. And the shadow side of Sagittarius is righteousness. We're going to be letting go of some of our beliefs and the mountains that we stand on and where we preach from, you know, if we're moving with this evolutionary energy. We are going to have an epic June solstice solar eclipse solstice. So I'll do another talk about that, but I feel like that's a huge piece of what we're getting ready for now in clearing out our hearts, getting aligned with ourselves, really taking seriously the lessons that we learned from this last cycle, and to be ready for this potency on June 21st. It's going to be one of the highlights of this whole year of 2020. And I just feel to mention that now. to mention that. And then we're going to be moving forward with our eclipses after that in Gemini and Sagittarius. So it's like the last Cancer eclipse, we've been having the eclipses in Cancer and Capricorn. That's why all these Capricorn planets have been so super heavy, because they're in the releasing in the South Node. And there's a lot of karma there around domination and oppression and patriarchy and colonialism and all that stuff, that heavy, heavy karmic stuff getting released and moving into creating a culture of care, creating a culture of motherly love towards each other, the Cancer energy. So, all that was going down too during this last Venus cycle. And I do feel like that backdrop of the nodes is super important. So it's pretty interesting that the Venus cycle is starting in the same sign, in the same consciousness as these nodal shifts. North Node in Gemini, Venus in Gemini is really pointing us into a direction. And so I think it's wise for us to pay attention to that. And no matter what our sign is, like, look at your house that has Gemini in it, because that's the area of your life that you're going to be invited. These eclipses are going to be happening there in the opposite house in Sagittarius. So that's something really good to notice as well. Okay. Anything else? I'll check the notes here. I don't think I saw. Okay. So Tara, you have some Sag. Yeah. And your midheaven. What degree is your midheaven? That could be a big one.
15, I think.
15. Okay. So yeah, that's
is conjunct my midheaven.
Okay, and that's a pretty close conjunction there. Yeah, okay. So it would be good to check with the degrees of the eclipses too for this year and see like how
I think
close
one of them is conjunct.
Beautiful.
I think it's like 16 or 17 degrees. I think it's like right there.
Yeah, beautiful. So you're going to really have an opportunity to re-envision.
And I have a nodal square happening because it's my North Node's 26 degrees of Virgo. So
okay.
This summer will be interesting.
The summer is going to be interesting regardless, but yeah, you might get a real charge, a real invitation into around what is your offering to the world. That midheaven opposition. There might be something really new that comes forward from that, or just being in like, I don't know what's going to happen is like such a power place to be in, and to be able to dwell in the not knowing of like, yeah, great.
I think it's exciting this time.
Yay. Yes, I'm excited too. I feel that. And then Regina, you have Chiron and Gemini at 14 degrees in the second house. Okay. So yeah, and so it might be a good time to do some research on Chiron, that wounded healer, and that might get opened up for you early, because we often feel the Chiron when we have our Chiron return. But if there's something major that happens on that point before then, we can be like, oh, that's what it is. So your primary wounding, according, I don't know you, but according to like the map would be that there's something for you around a disconnect around learning, and maybe not feel, could be like not feeling smart enough, or some way that you didn't feel like you could, really like get enough education, or like be considered smart or something like that, maybe. Yeah. And you're saying, yeah, so that might get opened up. And it's so cool because with Venus and Gemini, I feel there's such an invitation to relax around what we don't know. Like there's just too much to know, in my opinion. I have a lot of Sagittarius. I'm just like, oh, it's like so much. Like it is just like all the data bits are just, some days I can't even take in any more content, even if it's interesting. It's just like too much. So really finding and creating those spaces inside where we get to honor what we do know from our direct experience. There's not a lot of validation of that in our world. It's like a lot of it is about what degree you have, or what credential, or all of this. And so sort of really honor that heart knowing, and to be brave enough to go into the mystery, to go into that space of not knowing in order to arrive. I'm totally working with that myself right now, and really invoking the Venus in Gemini, of like the playfulness of not knowing. Like, have you ever seen people that are totally in the hot seat and they're presenting or something in front of zillions of people, and they're so relaxed. They're like, oh yeah, I forgot my notes and I don't know. And they're just like in their body, and they're just like being who they are. And everyone can just be like, oh, that's cool, whatever. She got her notes, she's improvising. And it becomes like an invitation into our humanness. You know, I feel like, I feel like we need more of that in those of us who are brave and showing up, and not trying to like present, but to actually relax into the fluidity of the arising moment. Or, hey, I was gonna say that, but this is actually what's here right now. I'm gonna say this, and that's an edge. And Venus is totally holding us and blessing us to step into that edge. And she's always about bringing us more into the authenticity of our hearts. So, all right. Well, I hope this was useful. Many, many, many blessings on your Venus retrograde. I'll be interested in the group if you want to share anything that's coming through. I'm going to do I started writing this morning about finding my crippled masculine. I was like, this is so rich. I'm going to write on this. It is brilliant time to write, to just whatever way you do to express your lessons from this last journey and get ready for the next Venus cycle. And this reset phase is really like she's going backstage, and she's really changing her costume from the Scorpio to the Gemini. And it doesn't feel like a deep underworld. It's not like that. It's like a reset. But to really like lean into that and allow it to change, be like, whoa, I'm totally not wearing that velvet anymore. That was so Venus and Scorpio. Like, I need some butterfly wings and some sparkles. We're going Gemini. So may you find those shifts in yourself. And yeah, good to see you in the group. I'm so glad it was helpful. Lots of love to each of you. Have a good evening. Good night. Good night. Bye.